Hi, everybody. Welcome back. So we've got a really good panel. Everything is moving to streaming, as we all know. I think there are 605 streaming services launching in the next year. Some of them have names you know. Some of them have names you don't. Some of them have names that should change. But this is all about that, and we have a really good panel. Our moderator for this, and then I'm going to join the panel. So right now I'm introducing, and then I'll be a panelist. Rick Allen has run a ton of different things. He's really an innovator, an entrepreneur, but also just a great citizen of the world as well. He runs Snag Film, the founding CEO of Snag Films, which he helped create, and the company's ViewLift unit, which is a really great supplier of back office, a back engine, and everything that is needed for streaming and SVOD and OTT. All of the acronyms we'll be throwing around here, is a unique platform helping media companies extend their audiences into OTT. He's done a number of things, including producing award-winning documentary films for ESPN and other places in 60 countries that have been on TV in on 60 countries around the world. But he was also deputy assistant to President Clinton and helped establish AmeriCorps. So you have somebody here who is really worked on all sides of the industry and a really great person to get to know. So Rick, take it away.
Awesome. All right. Thank you very much, and thank you for the shout out to AmeriCorps and the call and response. That's always awesome. So these lights are blinding enough that I can barely see that you're out there. But I also am acutely conscious of the fact that we're occupying a slot on a Friday afternoon, standing between you and your weekend. So we're going to try to make this interesting. We are certainly going to look to you for questions to this panel. So please be thinking of them and be ready to pose them. I want to first set the stage a little bit and really understand your areas of interest. Just show me hands, which I'm going to try to be able to see. How many people in the audience are working or want to work in media and entertainment? All right, that's a good breakdown. How about sports? Now we could make that part of the media and entertainment landscape. Okay. And how about technology? All right, so we've got something of a breakdown. Let me set the stage in this way. Factoids just from this week. Evan referred to the disruptive nature of this part of our business and, frankly, our entire business. Some statistics just from this week. AT&T said at the beginning of the week that they lost 1.5 million video subscribers in the last 90 days. 90 days. In the same announcement, they said we're announcing that we're going to release HBO Max, and we'll have 50 million subscribers in 4 years. One company, one announcement. On Monday, the New York Times wrote a major story about the massive promotion that Disney was putting behind Disney Go for a launch that's occurring on the 12th. They're aiming for 60 to 90 million subscribers by that same date, by 2024. Apple TV announced its TV Plus product. Amazon and Netflix have said they will spend $20 billion in next year, in 2020. $20 billion on content creation. If you look at consumer behavior, 2016, most folks who had pay subscriptions for video, for any video service, had one subscription. In 2018, 2 years later, most individuals and homes that have pay subscriptions have two or now three. And it's really the population represented by this audience that's driving this behavior, and the folks coming up behind you. Cord cutters, cord nevers, folks who have shifted from linear television to digital and mobile, or who never started in linear. And we're going to talk with Craig in a minute about that loop coming back around. But if you look at who those consumers are, and you take the group of 8 to 12-year-olds, half of them watch at least one online video a day. If you go to the cohort from 13 to 18, 2/3 of them watch at least one online video today. So let me ask this audience, who watched an online video yesterday? So maybe half or a little bit less than half.
It was Halloween yesterday, so.
It was Halloween. That's true. We got a control for that. Two last stats. On a global basis, over-the-top revenue, which we'll talk about today, streaming revenue, will double from 2018 to 2024. So this period that we're walking into, that you will be going out into the workforce, many of you, during, is going to be of epic growth. It's also going to be of significant challenge. This week alone, Sony announced that it's shutting down PlayStation Vue, a streaming service. Walmart today said that they're looking at selling Vudu, which has been their streaming service. So many companies coming in to the landscape, many companies going out of the landscape. So now we come to who's on this stage and what we may be able to talk about that's useful for you as you think about your role in this ecosystem. I'm going to start with Evan, who, as you know, is not only the co-chair of this one-day immersion, but he's also president of National Lampoon. Next to him, to my right, your left, Michael Smith is the principal of Michael Smith Media. I'm going to shortcut everyone's past because I'm going to want them to talk about what their journey has been in a minute. To my left, your right, Craig Parks. If you attended the last session, you heard from Craig. He's the general manager of brands for Jukin Media. And then Lily Oliver-Torres is the head of advertising business operations for Roku. So that's our group. And what I want to do, and I'll start with you, Lily, talk about the role you're now playing and the journey that you took to get here. And in particular, talk about it in the sense of what it represents in the broader changes that impact our industry and will impact our listeners' lives and careers going forward. And then we'll work it around.
Great. Thanks. So, hi everyone. I'm Lily. I work at Roku, as the intro said. I actually started out my career in what we would now refer to as traditional entertainment, which at the time was just entertainment. And I'd like to think it wasn't actually that long ago. I started out after college wanting to produce film and television. I spent a couple of years working for a comedy talent manager in Los Angeles and was really in the heart of how content was produced at the time, almost 15 years ago. As my career has progressed, I moved into more of the tech media side, working at Google for several years in a couple of capacities, including the sales strategy and operations function, of which I'm still generally a part today. At Google, I learned all about the digital advertising business. It was a very, very different perspective on content. I was embedded in YouTube's business, and it showed me really the other side from that content creation side that I was on initially. I think at the time, Google had only acquired YouTube a few years earlier. So even that was something new in the ecosystem. From Google, I went to a small ad tech startup, just about 40 people, a very different environment. And a few years ago was lucky enough to land at Roku, which is now, again, another version of how content is being distributed, another type of business model. And so at this point, I feel that I've seen a few different iterations of how we consume entertainment and content today. My role, advertising business operations, encompasses a few different pieces of our business. Primarily, we're working in two buckets. One is on client services, making sure that all of our content partners and advertisers have a really positive experience when promoting themselves through Roku. And then the other piece is analytics and insights. And when we talk a little bit more about roles in this space, I can go into more detail there.
Yeah, hey guys. So I started my career at MTV and VH1 in the late 90s, back when it was sort of the heyday for MTV and VH1. It was a heyday for cable television. It was effectively pre-internet. It was certainly on the rise at that point. One of the best things about MTV and VH1 is that they sort of threw you at any kind of production they needed help with. So I got to work on big, huge live events like the Video Music Awards, smaller studio-based shows with cool bands and promos and live shows, and even some stuff that was like even some marketing event type of things. And that kind of, I think, set the stage for sort of the path that I ended up taking. I've from there went on to do executive producing at ABC Family, where I was doing graphics packages and promos, and what eventually became Brand Entertainment, working directly with sponsors to create content for them and our audiences. Then went to work with Evan Shapiro over at IFC and continued doing the Brand Entertainment thing. Then digital came around, and up until digital coming around, my career was a little bit weird, because one thing you guys will start realizing is that people like to put you in lanes. You're a marketing person, you do marketing. You're a programming person, you do programming. You're a comedy person, you do comedy. It drives me crazy because that's not always true. For me, it was really hard because I did do a bunch of different things and people didn't know where to put me. Digital comes around, where suddenly you're in this world where content and marketing and content types start sort of crashing together. YouTube comes around, social media comes around, and suddenly mobile comes around, where we're literally out there creating stories ourselves and interacting with the content in really cool and fascinating ways. I was so super excited about what was happening there. So I threw myself into that pretty hard, ran digital for IFC. Now I'm at a company that, as you guys just heard, has built its business around user-generated media. And what's super cool about it is that it too has sort of found its voice. For the longest time, UGC was sort of seen as a bad word in the industry. It was, if it's really popular, but it's not brand safe, or it's sort of less than, it's not Game of Thrones, it's just whatever. But the truth is it's become sort of social currency. It's become one of the main ways that we are now connecting with each other, whether not just a viral video of, say, Pizza Rat, but also GIFs that you send to your friends, or memes, or snaps, or whatever else. It is one of the main ways we are now connecting with ourselves, one of the ways we're exploring the world and helping make sense of the world. The thing that I love is what excites me about what's happening in media now is that you can't just think about television or digital or a screen this big or a screen this big. You have to understand that people are the audiences who we serve, and you guys will ultimately serve, are consuming media, all different kinds of types of media on all kinds of different devices. And I've worked really hard to kind of put myself at the center of that mess, if you will. And I'm excited to see how while I started in television and everything started falling apart, it all became about VOD and subscription. It's now even coming back around to television again. People are actually starting to tune in to linear television in new ways and discovering it for the first time. So I think it's really exciting time.
Well, I grew up at a time when most people watched television or what got their video content through a little box that was in their living room that got the signals from over the air. And usually most homes had one of those boxes, and that was where we watched 2 or 3 different television channels. And even with that availability, I was super, super excited about television. And the greatest moment that happened in my life was when my mother, for a Christmas present, bought me one of these little mini 13-inch television sets that I could actually put in my own room. and watch all the time. And so I was always excited about television, and I always wanted to work in the industry. And to Rick's point about how quickly the business changes, my dream as a teenager was to be a person who ran a television station, like a local television station that made the programming that went into that little box. But by the time I got out of college, people weren't watching it through those boxes with antennas. They were watching television through cables that were coming through under the ground into their televisions, delivering hundreds of channels. So that meant that I had to kind of recalibrate where the job opportunities would be, not in working at a local television station, but working in cable television. So I started my career in TV at a company called the Disney Channel, which at the time was a new cable television channel, and then eventually worked for another cable channel called Food Network, which was part of a company that owns HGTV and Food Network and Travel Channel. And during my years at that company, I did marketing and creative services work, similar to what Craig has done, and then ultimately got involved with programming and production and more general management, and created a television network called Cooking Channel for the company, which launched about 9 years ago. And then the last 3 or 4 years, I've been focused on the next transition, which is from the television sets that went over the air to the cable boxes to now, as you guys know, television is being delivered over the internet directly to screens. And so I worked with our company on how we develop products that will deliver content that way to complement our other business, which, as Rick talked about, is declining very quickly. I left actually Scripps after it was acquired by Discovery, and I've been consulting with lots of different companies to help deal with this disruption that's going on in the industry and this transition that people have to figure out how to deal with.
So I don't know what Greg is talking about. I'm 25. This is my first job.
Yeah.
No, I started in the original and only truly analog entertainment business, theater. And moved from there into television, first at Core TV in marketing, and then IFC doing programming. It's taken a couple twists and turns from there. I created a network that was a hybrid online linear network called Pivot, and then went to NBC and started a streaming service called CISO. And in the last transition I made, the decision I chose was I looked across the landscape and, understood that this is where we were heading, into a streaming wars future where everybody was competing for consumers on different platforms. And rather than work at a platform, I decided to try to become an arms dealer in the streaming wars. And at Lampoon, what we're trying to do is become the single best arms dealer in comedy to all the providers in the streaming wars. So we are now a studio that works in audio, television, live. We have 6 shows at the New York Comedy Festival coming up this next week, and film. And we are going to be providing premium comedy content to whoever wants to buy it from us.
So I think there are a couple of themes in all of our backgrounds. I'll mention mine briefly and then mention those themes, and then I want to ask individual questions of my colleagues up here. I've been running media and technology companies for quite some time now, first at Discovery and then ran National Geographic and launched the cable channel and expanded that business, and then ran a sports media company called Sporting News, and then launched our company, which began as Snag Films and is now ViewLift. We are a business-to-business company. That is, we build out channels for other content owners. And we've got something that's considered to be end-to-end, meaning if you're a content owner, a media company, an entertainment company, sports league, sports team, Jukin, in fact, is one of our clients, we'll build out channels for you across all streaming devices, mobile, connected TVs, Roku. All of our clients are on Roku, in fact. And we'll combine video with other types of content and help you stream and monetize it. What we've learned in that migration into being a service provider to stream other people's content, and what I think you heard from all of the panelists, is that content always exists, a type of distribution always exists, some kind of monetization, some way of making money to, as Jonathan said in the last panel, to keep paying your employees, gets discovered and exists. And everything else changes all the time. And I think if you asked any of us if we envisioned we'd be in our current job when we were leaving college, not a one of us would say yes. In fact, our current jobs probably didn't exist when we were in college. And so part of what I hope the One Day Immersion expresses and inculcates is that expect to be flexible. The opportunities are going to keep opening up for you. You're coming from a great school, great programs. The challenges are going to be endless. You heard Jonathan say over the last decade how hard it's been for him as an entrepreneur to anticipate changes. So all of that is happening, and all of it, I think, is exciting for all of you and exciting for all of us in looking at the future. I want to ask a couple of questions about the present and the past of each of the panelists, just to focus us in on things. Evan, you talked about CISO, a really innovative subscription service. Giant traditional media company, NBCU, launched it in comedy. It didn't work. What did
Thanks
you
for
learn?
reminding me of that. That's really awesome of you to do that.
Thank you. Everything else you've touched has been a success, and so let me ask precisely about that. What did you learn from that experience? John said you learn more from the things that don't work than you may from your successes. What did you learn from CISO that you're bringing into National Lampoon today?
So the lesson from CISO for me was I really like making content. And in fact, I'm actually probably the only person on the panel who actually is in the job they dreamt of when they were a child, because it was the only one that actually existed, which is producing content. Yeah. You know, it's the thing that has always been kind of constant. In fact, National Lampoon is 50 years old. So, you know, the key here, though, was after I left CISO, first of all, the thing I learned most is the streaming services, the thing that you do, is a huge pain in the ass. You know, there's this idea that, you know, broadcast television is super complicated and streaming is really easy. You just deliver it direct to the consumer. But Roku, different app than iOS, different app than Android, different app than PlayStation, different app than Xbox. Your company builds these apps and these front door applications for all these people. When you want to deploy a front door app for a streaming service out there in the world, it's not one app. It's like 27 different apps. And every time you change the back engine of your platform, it breaks every app. And so you have to go out there and fix with engineers in Romania and Guatemala the apps that break. You probably have this on a daily basis on your platform, and it was a nightmare. I hated that part of the business. I hated the operational part of the business. I hated, frankly, the customer acquisition part of the business. The cost of getting every subscriber is so substantial right now, $70, $80 a subscriber just to get a subscriber, and then you have to spend a ton of money to keep that subscriber. All I really ever wanted to do was create brands and make content. And so the big decision I made on my 50th birthday as I was leaving NBC was I never want to be in the operation of a platform again. I want to go back to why I got into the business in the first place, which is making great content with artists. Now I'm in a job where most of my day is spent talking to artists about making content. You know, the panel I hosted earlier today was all about comedy. What a joy for me, for someone who grew up, just like Michael was describing, you know, at the glow of that little black and white television in my bedroom, watching, you know, Johnny Carson, who, rest in peace, was the person I went to bed with every night. The idea that I could get to do that on a permanent basis was really the thing that was the biggest revelation for me, was spend all of my career dedicated to the thing that I'm actually okay at and that I love best, which is making content with artists.
I want to come back to how the nature of content has changed and what that means for the world that we're headed into. But I want to turn on something else, Evan, that you mentioned and ask you, Michael. You've created great brands and successful media properties for big companies. You're now advising big companies and startup ventures and thinking about your own startup ventures. Most people I know in the college age group, broadly defined, dream of the day when they can be their own boss. Thinking as an entrepreneur, what kind of roles do you think the new stream universe opens up for entrepreneurs, for young people in particular, interested in taking their own idea and applying it, whether it's on the content creation side, on the monetization side, on the distribution side? What are you seeing that would be useful for these folks as they think about that entrepreneurial objective?
Well, I think when you talk about entrepreneurship in entertainment, there's probably two different levels to look at it. One level is sort of more of the gig economy, sort of freelance part of the business, which has always been part of the business because basically every person who's an actor or a makeup artist or a lighting grip or a video editor, I mean, probably half the people that work in the entertainment industry are independent contractors who are just independent talents. But the other level of it is you're talking about creating businesses and creating companies around delivering entertainment. I think that the streaming technology shift is creating amazing opportunities. If you go back and look at the history of television, what's happened is that technology has unleashed the ability to have more diverse content that targets specific niches, and that's we went from a world of 3 television channels to cable television enabled us to have multiple television channels. One about music, MTV; one about news, CNN. And with streaming, we have the same power, and even accelerated to hyper target and hyper focus on specific niches and specific interests. And that's where it creates opportunities, I think, for entrepreneurs to identify these niches and pull together new video businesses. And thanks to the technology shift, if you go back 20 years ago to start a new cable channel, let's say you wanted to do like when we did Cooking Channel, a channel about food, the amount of capital cost it would take to start that channel from an operational point of view, to be able to build the infrastructure to beam the channel up to a satellite and have it go to cable systems and be sent to people, it was tens of millions of dollars. Today, thanks to companies like Rick's company, you can have your video service up and running and on millions and millions of connected television sets for a fraction of that cost. So that just creates the ability for people who just have a great idea and understand an audience to start services. And the final thing I'd say, though, before you start your own company, this is what I learned, was that I think it's good to work in the existing companies for a little while and understand how it's people who have done it before, have done it for, and learn some of those skills before you reach escape velocity to actually do your own thing. So that's my other piece of advice.
It also helps to know the mind of the people you're selling your services to, understanding what they're buying.
The nature of content is changing. The opportunities for people to find different ways of reaching audience with it are changing. Craig, at Jukin, you've created something that was quite new when Jonathan started. He talked about it in the last discussion. User-generated, but this is curated user-generated content. You did touch on this in the last discussion, but how does that change the roles of the advertising community? How are you providing a new kind of value for them? And what does this kind of content and the mechanism that Jukin represents, what does that do for content creators and ultimately for the consumer?
Yeah, good question. It's funny, as Evan was talking about how he spent his whole career kind of getting to the place where he was able to finally just make content. I started making content and have worked really hard to get away from making content because it's really boring. It's really not. It's actually really exciting. I just did it for too long. But it is, look, we where to start. Not all content is created equally, right? There's good shows, there's bad shows, there's good writers, bad writers, so it's good actors, bad actors. The same applies to user-generated content. Your video of your dog may be cute to you, but to everybody else, maybe, probably not. So what is it about that content that gets 100 million views? Whether it's a rat dragging a piece of pizza down the stairs, or a woman trying on a Chewbacca mask for the first time and laughing hysterically. What is it about this stuff that gets people to watch and watch and watch and watch? And at the end of the day, it's a lot of the same things. It's quality, right? It's just something about it. It's something that there's that magic element to it, but it's also good storytelling and so on and so forth. So the team that we have that goes out and finds this stuff is looking for the best of the best through the various filters that we employ. We don't just take anything. And we also are not looking for salacious content or plane crashes or anything horrible like that. We're looking for things where people have taken time to capture a moment that is special. Sometimes it's a one-off, like a cute moment of a baby playing with a puppy. Sometimes it's something someone spends a lot of time with, like a wingsuiter who straps on 15 GoPros to himself as he jumps off a mountain. At the end of the day, it's all user-generated content, but it's all story-driven. And then this notion of quality, however subjective that is, still applies. I think in terms of monetizing it and making it a thing of value has been an interesting journey. When I got to Jukin, one of my jobs was to figure out how to make more money for the company. The first thing I did was look at the sales team and look at the way that they positioned our product, which is just user-generated content on these different channels, and what was the story they were telling the advertising community. And it was interesting. They were going in saying, like, look, we got scale and this stuff is meaningful. They had this one slide where they showed a picture of Coachella in 2007, and there was like one guy in the picture with a flip phone taking a picture of whoever was on stage, and then there was a picture of Coachella in 2011 or 2015 or whatever it is, and literally it was just a sea of cell phones, of mobile phones, of iPhones. Thousands of them. And it was very powerful, and it was a great way of expressing that people are using these devices to capture stories, but there was something missing to the story. They were talking about scale, they were talking about numbers, but there wasn't a lot of swagger in the story, I thought. There wasn't anything that said that why this content is popular. So we got 200 million fans, we got 3 billion views, but what was it about this content? So one of the first things that I did was commission actually Robert Miner, who was here earlier doing a panel. He's good friends, worked with Evan and I on a number of things, and we did a deep study around the relationship that people have with this type of content. And we came out with a number of things. They said, number one, the audience said this is the most authentic, relatable content in the world. If you know anything about advertisers, they're always talking about authenticity. They want a real connection with their customers, and so that's something that's really powerful. The second thing he said is that social currency. I talked about it earlier. This is content that we're using to share with each other, to connect with each other, to figure out how life works. And the last thing they said, and this was really, really important for us too, is they said while they will watch this content on any device, and they do, they said it's not television. And by that, they meant that, look, Game of Thrones or Fleabag or whatever, that's great, and we watch that, but we also watch all this other content. So it allows us to go to an advertiser and say, hey guys, yes, because look, a lot of the advertisers say, oh, you're not brand safe and you're not premium, our content. Now we get to go, number one, we get to go in there and not use the word UGC anymore because it's kind of a bad word. We get to say, look, every single one of us in the world is capturing stories on our cell phones, and everyone in the room goes, oh yeah, here we are. And then the next thing we can say is like, and this content is exceptionally valued to literally every single person. And we, Jukin, are the best curators and packagers of this content. So for us now, we have a really, really solid story to go back to ad communities, to go to platforms like Roku, and who we do really well on, and others. And it's been really exciting to really transform the story around this content and give it a little bit more meaning.
Just to follow up, as you're talking to young people about the role they can play in that business, new opportunities for story creators, new opportunities for finding ways to monetize it, different platforms to distribute it on. Are you seeing all of those as sources of professional opportunity for people entering the industry now?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Michael said it best. I mean, there's just so much more opportunity at a fraction of the cost, not just to be on platforms that literally the entire world can consume, but to produce the content. There's also another thing Michael didn't get into is gatekeepers. There used to be very, very few, mostly white men who owned all the keys to the kingdom. That is crumbling really, really fast. That's really exciting. A lot of opportunity there to create your own voice and to create your own experience, to explore your own passions and build your own audience. So I think that's really the essence of our business. A lot of where we're headed at Jukin as we're starting to build out creator networks and things like that. I think it's a really, really exciting time. Everything still applies. It's still hard. You still got to tell a good story. You still got to think about how to make a living and so on and so forth. But the accessibility is pretty huge, and it's right there for us.
The notion of scale leading into opportunities is something, Lily, that I think Roku represents. You've now got more than 30 million active users. That's an extraordinary scale in an environment, as we were talking about before this panel, where there are really huge companies operating, and often they don't need to make money on the thing they're competing with you on. What kind of new jobs comes out of that kind of scale for folks entering the market now, and how do you think about those topics?
Yeah, it's a great question, and the exciting piece is that as we grow, we're hiring in almost every area. One thread that cuts through almost all the jobs that we have today is being data-driven and analytics. I think that's one of the core skill sets that we're looking at. Every part of our business, whether you're in a client-facing role, a back-office role, is driven by the numbers and what we're seeing in our databases and our systems. So certainly data science is a very hot role. There are a lot of analytics that are closer and more embedded in the business that are very interesting day to day and afford that opportunity to really learn about the business as well. I would say from an entry-level perspective, the top quality that we're looking for is that curiosity in our business. I think you can't beat that if you've done some research, if you can throw out a couple of stats, and if you're ready to roll up your sleeves and contribute, then that's a really excellent attitude going into your first role. After a few years, or even sooner than that, new roles pop up all the time. I thought that was a great point you made earlier. I didn't replace anyone in my role at Roku. I think the concept of the job exists out there and at other companies, but it was a net new position, and a lot of the roles that I've hired for over the past 2 years, almost a person a week, have been brand new jobs that we've posted as we've grown. So that's also exciting as well. There's a almost a choose your own adventure quality. It's all with the business outcomes in mind, but a lot of, depending on your interest and your passion, there are a lot of places that you can contribute.
Can I just jump in there real quickly? Because data science is going to be probably the most hot part of the media entertainment industry for the next probably at least decade, probably beyond that, because all these new platforms need data scientists to determine how best to capture audiences. But it's also a great way to understand how to make content. And the analogy I use, I had a data scientist explain this to me the other day. So think about YouTube and think about, after porn, the most popular type of video online is animals, right? So, and if you think about the most popular animal videos, it's usually cats and dogs, corgis and kittens and things like that. But it's also the most cluttered. You can make a cat video, but there are 10 million cat videos and you're competing against it. The most engaged animal videos online, but the least number of them, is animal births. If you make an animal birth video, it will have far less competition and have much more engagement. In our home, we are fascinated when April the giraffe had her last 2 babies. And so the idea that you can actually determine what type of content to make by paying attention to the data science is how you can look at how the universe changes around data, even if you're not in the data department, if you're in the programming department. Second thing I would jump on that Lily said is my last 6 jobs were all created for me. So the idea that you have to go apply for a job. Obviously, entry level, you're probably looking for a job that already exists and just opened. But from that point on, look for where the growth is. Look for where the money is moving. And those are where the opportunities will lie best for you.
Those are both great suggestions. I've got another 20 questions at least, but we've got just a few minutes. I want to take questions in the audience. So we've got some microphones. We'll move them around. Raise your hands. Young lady there. Do we have a...
I'm Shapiro from St. John's University. I'm a career and internship advisor. So I actually have two questions. So the first one, I'm going to work backwards. You had just mentioned earlier about the statistics, right, and the data, and then the students should learn how it works, the data works, to understand how to create content. And earlier everybody was saying the data, the statistics, what is the number saying, the ratings, right? How do students get a hold of that? Because that's what I was thinking about.
A hold of the data itself?
Yes, or the statistics. Or how can I teach my students where can we find that, the ratings and things like that?
Ratings, they're available almost all entirely online.
Okay.
Yeah, if you, what's the TV?
I know Nielsen is one, but I'm trying to figure out which.
No, but there's a website, and
I'll tell you that there's a site called Show Buzz Daily.
Show Buzz Daily, okay.
That gives you the overnight ratings every night. Mm-hmm. And then there's another one called ProgrammingInsider.com.
That's a good one too.
Those two websites post all the Nielsen ratings.
But realizing that the Nielsen ratings is just a fraction of what's being watched on a nightly basis, and so what you're missing from the Nielsen is everything on Netflix, everything on Hulu, everything on what's soon to be Apple TV and Disney Plus and all those types of things. And so you have to really scrub the numbers. Like, you just have to pour through the data on a daily basis. Most of it is available out there, except Netflix, who keeps everything in a black box behind a vault somewhere because they don't really want people knowing it, because they have no ad sales, so it's not really in their best interest. But the things to look at, first of all, get to know data scientists. There's a whole department, that specializes that at almost every university. Make those people your best friend. Make the researchers your best friends, because they can help you tell your story and help you find the opportunities. So I always wherever I go, I find the data people, the research people, and I take them out to lunch.
There's also, if someone is willing to make content and put it up on YouTube or Facebook, as long as someone is watching that those platforms will give you data back. You'll find out how many people watched it, when they started watching it, when they dropped off. There's all kinds of data that we look at every single day to tell us, what do people like about our content, and that content is available to everybody as long as you get someone to watch your stuff.
Okay, and I think I'm sorry.
The platforms that are building out these services like ours, one of the key differentiators is what that real-time dashboard looks like. What does it tell you? And it's not just content consumption. We provide in real time across all of these different devices, which, as Evan said, don't speak to one another and have their own proprietary systems. We'll tell you everything about content, who's consuming what, at what time of day, for what length of time, by individual asset. When, on episode 1 of the series, did the majority of folks drop off? But we're also wrapping in all of the revenue numbers, quality of service. If you get a customer complaint because their streaming isn't working as fast as they would like, is it due to a problem with their ISP? Put all of that into a real-time dashboard that the company, the content owner, can access at any time. You've given really powerful tools to them. And as the panelists have discussed, people are using that. Our clients, for example, use that to make decisions about what individual shows to renew and continue, what genres to become more heavily invested in, what ideas within particular story types are really open and ripe, how long content should be, We had a sports client that had spent millions of dollars building out studio facilities because they were convinced that was going to be the differentiator for them to provide the kind of ESPN Sports Center sort of programming, and found out within 2 months of launch that that wasn't why people were coming to them. All of those are very useful, and the information has become democratized now. So the client can see it at all levels in their organization and figure out what that says to them. Much of that information is proprietary to those particular clients, but that's why internships are incredibly valuable, because you'll see how that information is used to really make decisions.
Another site is socialblade.com.
Socialblade.
Socialblade.com is the #1 tracker of all YouTube's traffic and activity. So it's good to check that one out.
Thank you. And my second question is, and I think you just answered it. So I work a lot with my English students and the comm art students, and they're all about developing that content to be in the writer's room. How do students get into the writer's room, especially when they're a student now, and doing for internships, and then when they graduate?
Did you say writer's room?
The writer's room, like to be like, to be in a writer's room for a TV show, to write that and develop that content.
It's a good way to do that is to intern at until very recently, intern at talent agencies, but that now they're at war with the Writers Guild, so that's not as great a place to be.
Okay.
So I would say managers' shops, Artists First, 3 Arts, Anonymous, those types of places are really important. This university has a really great arts department. I would look towards alumni who are now writing on shows and reach out to them. There are great internships at Saturday Night Live, Jimmy Fallon, Stephen Colbert, all here in New York City. Get close to writers, and if you hang out with writers, they tend to hire people that they like. We all tend to hire people that we like, and so being in the right room at the right place is really key to that. The other thing is, if you want to be a writer's assistant or if you want to be a writer, first you have to be writing. And so right now, social media offers an opportunity to post samples of your writing on a daily basis. Not necessarily, hey, I just had a salad and it was super crunchy, but create a fictional character and put that up online and create a universe there, world build. Wattpad is a place where you can actually self-publish. Instagram is a place where you can do short form fictional stuff. Podcasting is a place where you can write your own stuff and put it up every day. You need to be creating on a constant basis. But as this panel just demonstrated, find people who can help you also then spread the word. So if you write a play and you're going to do a performance in a church basement in the village, find somebody who's really good at social media who can tell people about it. Because if you make a piece of art and no one comes to see it, it's just a placemat. And so make sure that you surround yourself with a village of people who can complement the work that you're doing and help spread that word.
Thank you so much.
That's it. Thank you all very much.
Thanks a lot.
Enjoy the rest of your Friday.